Thank you. I wished I was preaching the word this morning, but we have some others that are going to be doing the speaking. I will just introduce a little bit about what we're going to do. Um, for a long time now, Sunset has known that preachers cannot learn everything they need to know about ministry in the classroom. Is anyone surprised? There's no surprises in that, right? And so we've known for many years at Sunset that a practicum ministry or program, whichever you'd rather call it, would be very helpful to our students. And so some years ago, we began a internship program. We have a summer internship program and a postgraduate internship program. And so if you didn't know that, I want you to know that. And you level one students, be sure to be thinking about this summer and where you would like to go. And we have about 40 congregations that will be contacting us in the next few months and several months down the road and wanting a summer intern. And so we have plenty of places for almost all the new level one students and some of you who are the tweeners who will come back another year after this next summer. We have room for you also to serve. And so I thought it would be a valuable thing to have some of the men that went on internships this summer to stand and talk a little bit about their experience and areas that they grew in. I honestly told them to tell us the good, the bad, and the ugly, but be very kind about the ugly. Okay, because even bad experiences are a time of Christian growth. And until you face some of those challenges, or until you're out walking the streets and ministering to the people in the congregation, uh, people have a lot of problems, and sometimes the minister is drawn into those. And so uh, you learn how to work with people and love people anyway. And so this experience, this internship experience, I think is very, very valuable to anyone who is going from Sunset out into full time ministry. And so we want to be helpful in doing that. I don't want to take too much of their time, but I do want to read a little bit of a report I received from uh, Russell Bean. I don't know him, but some of you may know him. But he wrote a report about Michael Jimenez, and we all know Michael. Is he here today? I don't think he's here today, but I didn't see him. But listen to some of the things they said about Michael. Overall attitude, excellent attitude. Michael uh, has been willing to do anything he was asked to do. He has been a positive responder in all situations. It could be in blistering hot summer days, wind blowing dust 50 miles an hour, lightning flashing, and storms all about. But it did not matter. If he was asked to do something, he responded, and he responded with a positive attitude and respectful attitude every single time. I think we know Michael, and we certainly understand what a kind individual he is. Strengths: spiritual maturity, logical reasoning, and a desire to get better. Michael blessed us all summer with wise, well thought out, and pointed sermons every Sunday. Improvement needed in the area. Patience with coworkers. We work in a high pressure situation when fatigue uh, plagues against us. We deal with some very stressful situations which cause all of us to be on edge at times. So, sounded like Michael needed to grow in the area called patience. I couldn't hardly believe that when I read it, but obviously he had some opportunities to really grow. And then the last comment, I'll just read a portion of it. It says, "Thank you, thank you, thank you for allowing this opportunity for Michael to work with us this summer. It was a complete joy to watch him serve as a servant of the Lord God Almighty." So uh, we know Michael, and we know what kind of summer he's had and the things he's going through. But boy, is it nice to hear the way he was willing to serve, and he went even beyond. I wish I could read you the whole report. He said he went beyond all that they asked him to do, and if he saw something that needed to be done, he didn't need to be told to do it. He didn't ask anyone. He just did it, and so he really worked there uh, with a servant heart and willing to serve and do everything. So our speakers are going to be Michael Isom, Darren Bible, Nathaniel Thompson, Gavin Taylor, and Paul uh, Aarons. And I will be at the back giving them a signal when time's getting close to be over, okay? So hopefully we can stay on time. Michael?
Hey, good morning, believers. How y'all doing? Good, good. So, for the internship, me and my wife got an opportunity to go to Terrell, Texas, which is about 30 minutes outside of Mesquite in Dallas. And so there's a cross street called Rockwall and Bryn, and the church is Rockwall and Bryn Church of Christ. And I'll just kind of give you a real brief snapshot of some of the things we did this summer. We went to OC, Oklahoma Christian Campus, from June 9th to June 15th, and we did a um, 6 day work starting at like 9 in the morning, and we was running hard till 10 and 11 at night. And so the dynamics of that camp is called Camp Genesis. If anybody's heard about it, it's been running for 30 years. The minister Garen, he did it for 20 years, left and did ministry in California, Long Beach. And so this was his first time back in about 10 years. And so we got a lot of bonding time. And so in Oklahoma, you have a lot of inner city works going on. And so the dynamics of the camp is to take youth, middle school and high school, and put them in uncomfortable situations, situations where it's people maybe not from their dynamic, right? And so we got a chance to just serve. Going to there's a city called Shawnee, and in Shawnee you have a community garden where they have distribution coming from like Walmart, Kroger's, places like that, and then they built a community garden. So what happens is you have families who come in and they actually have them go inside and get food off the shelf, but then they also have a cold section where they're giving food as well. And so maybe they feed about 1,000 people in a week. And so great work, and we had an opportunity to just work hard in the name of Jesus. I got a chance to till, like move the grounds, sow, plant, all that stuff. And so every single day we sweated hard in the name of Jesus. And so we had about 9 youth go from Rockwall and Bryn, came back, and once we got back to Terrell, Texas, I really just kind of hit the community. Everything that I did throughout the week was based on building relationships with people. I stayed in the office a little bit when I was maybe doing some sermon prep, but for the most part, everything I did was really in the community. Um, I ran a 3 day basketball camp that kind of stemmed from um, so kind of right by their church, they had a venue where a lot of vendors in the city came out. So you had people from let's say the city of Turl, different vendors, right? Medicaid type stuff. And so all I did was set up a booth, put some basketball apparel up and things like that, and just build a relationship with the people. And from there, they had a Juneteenth on the south side of Terrell, and so at Breezy Park, and I went there as well on Juneteenth, and just built relationships with the people. And we got an opportunity to run a 3 day basketball camp. I framed it coaching, character, and confidence. And so just had a chance to just pour in, be gospel hearted, and teach some kind of skills and drills as well. Um, at the Juneteenth event, this is who I run into. I run into Jack Evans, Herb Evans, as a matter of fact, right? Run into his son. Then I run into a woman named Angela Hill, and I got 1 minute. Okay, good deal. So I run into Angela Hill, and she's actually been a coordinator for 11 years on the Southwest campus. So they run a trio program where for 6 weeks they take students in high school and they put them in college atmospheres, right? It's all about mentoring and growing. So I got an opportunity from there to actually do like an empowerment session and speak to about 40 youth. And so one of the youth were actually in our congregation. Other than that, lastly, real quick, for 8 weeks, my focus with the family and youth, that was my ministry, was really to teach the youth how to be effective on the campus in their community and then within the congregation. And so really kind of four strategies with taking the gospel. We got a chance to kind of brand Rock Roll and Brand, kind of get shirts made, and then shirts for the youth. Where when we go into the community, we have in a sense of presence, right? We know God opened doors. And lastly, my main focus was really to establish a prayer culture. So establish a kind of a prayer call, and every Monday, the leaders in the church, I'm calling, hey, man, we need to pray. We need to seek the Lord, right? And so unless the Lord builds the house, the laborers build in vain. And so that was really my main focus. And if you could pray for anything, pray for two things. They're transitioning into kind of missional communities. And so pray for that, and then pray that a prayer culture is established. Preached the word 3 times and got a chance to teach, and really always taught on really advancing the kingdom within family dynamics. So thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
And I am Darren Bible, and my wife and I were blessed this summer to serve the Palm Desert Church of Christ in Bermuda Dunes, California. Wonderful group of Christians that really have a heart to want to know more about God and how to show God in their community. That is really an emphasis they have, to be ambassadors to their community. Unfortunately, we started out with a bad. The week before we arrived, the church had went through a split, and so that's not an ideal situation to go into an internship. But as Speedy mentioned, you can't teach everything in a classroom, so we were going to learn how to work in a congregation that's hurting, that is going through some disunity, and we just prayed that God would use us in that situation to help the congregation um, focus on Him. And I believe that was accomplished. I think God really worked through the internship to help that. Right now, the congregation is in search of a pulpit minister, so there is no pulpit minister there. So I was part of my internship was to serve as the pulpit minister. So I preached each Sunday, and they actually asked me to preach based on what was happening within the congregation, to preach out of the Sermon on the Mount, topics from the Sermon on the Mount. So I am so thankful to Kevin and what he taught us in our Matthew class, that we could then take that information and hopefully encourage the congregation to live those kingdom living principles that are found in the sermon. And I pray that I did an adequate job of relaying that information to the congregation. I was also asked to teach the Sunday morning adult Bible class, and in this case, they basically said you can teach whatever you want to teach. And in lieu of the disunity that was happening, I couldn't think of anything better to teach than the book of Philippians. And I'm so thankful, again, to Ray Young for bringing out things in our study of Philippians about unity and humility and living a transformed life. And truly, that was my favorite part of the internship, was to then take what I had learned here and hopefully relay it to the congregation. And this congregation really, really needed that information. And I think they really grew in their love of Philippians. We didn't get through the entire book in, classic style. We got halfway through it in 6 weeks, but boy, did they just really grew in that. I was also given the opportunity to participate in their vacation Bible school. And for those of you that know me from my time as a youth minister and before, you know that I really, really love Vacation Bible School. It would not take much coaxing for us to get up and sing the hippo song right now, because it's something that I have kept that passion since I was a little boy. I love Vacation Bible School. Um, Now, this is a Vacation Bible School like I had never been involved with. This congregation is located in a part of the Coachella Valley that is very unchurched. And we had 55 kids, and I would say 50 of those were unchurched children. What a blessing. It's also something I'm not used to. I'm used to being in a VBS with kids that have been brought up in the church. They've known these songs since they were born. And I get up there that first day and I sing the way I sing, which is full out, full throttle forward. And none of these kids knew any of those songs. They knew this middle aged guy is really into it. But let me tell you, by the second day, they were into it too. And by the third day, some of them were coming up and leading songs with me. They didn't know any better. And they were, some of them were crawling on my back. But that just shows that they caught fire to what we were doing there. So that was a blessing. The final thing that I want to talk about is the last thing I was involved with, which is their food distribution. Again, this is a congregation that's located in a lower income area of the Palm Springs area. It's a very high cost of living, and there's some people that are hurting financially. So they do a food distribution each month. And this is a big one. They bring in a semi truck full of food. And so the congregation gets there in the morning, and we unload the pallets of food. We set it up in the fellowship hall, kind of like a grocery store where it's different areas have different things. And then that evening, once a month, the community knows that they can come and receive their food. So I want to just tell you how neat this is. They don't just come and we give them food and send them on their way. They come in, they fill out their paperwork, and then they are partnered with a member of the congregation. And we've got a little wagon. And so we take that individual and we walk around the stations and we put the food in the wagon the whole time talking with this individual, building a relationship, starting that relationship process. Then we take their food to their car and load it in their car. Last statement, one lady said to me as I was loading her car, "The reason I love coming to your church is you treat me with dignity," which tells me that she may have not been treated with dignity at other places. That's what we're called to do, to be the hands and feet of Jesus who treated people in their situations with dignity. Enjoyed my time. It was a truly blessing, even though it got off to a rough start. What a blessing it was. Thank you.
So my wife Bertie and I, we interned back home in Missouri, north of the St. Louis area. We interned in a small town called Troy, Missouri. It has about 10,000 people in it, and we did work with our home congregation back home. The first thing that I would like to talk about is when we got there, we quickly realized that we had to change gears. We went with this anticipation of doing evangelism and outreach alongside the church as a team effort. But when we got there, my dad, the deacon of evangelism, took the plans for the summer with evangelism and said, "Here you go." And I was like, "Dad, how much leadership do I have in this area?" And he said, "You got it all, basically. I mean, the elders trust you. You've got my trust, so go ahead." All right. The thing that the church had planned was for the big part of the summer was setting up a booth in the Lincoln County Fair and using the booth as a means to reach out to the community. They had done it last year to raise awareness for a marriage seminar, but this year they were trying to do it in terms of evangelism. So what I did was I didn't put the church's name on the booth. I set up a fun game called a toilet paper toss. If you got all 3 toilet paper rolls in this wastebasket with a toilet seat on it, you won a prize. And I had a bunch of free material on a booth concerning the church and also basic Bible study material for people who are churched or may not be churched but don't know anything about the Bible or Christianity. And it was really cool seeing how people responded to it. We had a lot of people come up and just we're surrounded by all these vendors and all these other churches that have their names on their booths, and we're the only one with no name on our booth. And they would come over and say, "So, who are you guys?" It was the perfect opportunity to just be like, "Well, let me tell you about us. Here, come look at some of this material. Take what interests you." And what was cool is I spent probably, I want to say, almost $200 on material to put on the booth, and we didn't have anything left by the end of the week. We used it as a way to kickstart a prayer campaign, and by the end of it, we had 81 names for the church to pray for, and we had 39 names saying, "Yes, follow up with me," concerning this prayer need. Uh, what became difficult after that, though, was trying to build the momentum in the church to say, "Okay, we've got this prayer list, we've got these names saying follow up with us, let's get that going." So I was able to teach on evangelism on Wednesday nights, and also discipleship, and that just got a good momentum going in the church with that. Tried to organize the church into 4 different teams: a prayer team, a visitation team, a mentoring team, and an evangelism team. And just seeing people get excited about where their giftedness could fit into in the context of working together as a church was exciting to see that. I also got really excited seeing my wife teach some of the youth some ASL and be involved in that. The Fairgrounds loves Birdie. Uh, and then kind of to close, I think the biggest thing for us was just realizing that at the end of the day, you can have plans for what you're going to do in ministry, but sometimes those plans get disrupted, sometimes those plans change. And as long as you keep the mindset of it's not about what I have planned, it's not about the work I'm doing. What matters is the work the Lord is doing through us. Then you never know where He's going to lead. And it was really incredible seeing how God could use us amongst people that already know us. So I was very, very appreciative for this summer experience.
My name is Gavin Taylor, and I spent my summer in Panhandle, Texas, working with the youth in the congregation there. And the entire summer for me was a lot of new things and a lot of opportunity to adjust and experience things that I had never experienced before. Where I used to live, where I grew up in Virginia, was a rather large city. Where I went to school before coming here in Memphis, Tennessee, was a large city. Lubbock is a relatively large city, and then I moved out to Panhandle, and their population is like 1,700 people. It's not a huge town. It's literally sitting outside of a government facility, and most of the people that live there either work in that facility or they drive to Amarillo to work. So it was an adjustment for me switching from large city mindset to a small city mindset, and more everybody knowing who everybody else was, a much stronger sense of community than a lot of other places have, in the sense that a lot of them were coworkers with each other. They all knew each other. All their kids knew each other. They were very close knit, and so that was very much a new experience, because a lot of the times places that I experienced didn't necessarily have that. But I had opportunity to work with their youth, and when I arrived in Panhandle, Texas, my mindset was that I was probably going to be living with one of the two elders' families, and that I would be working with the church and working with their preacher there. And I showed up in Panhandle and attended their service on Sunday morning. And afterwards, they took me over and they said, "This is an apartment that we got you for the summer. This is where you're going to be staying, and this is your office that you're going to be working out of, and you're going to be helping these kids." And they gave me a schedule of like different events and things that were going to be going on over the summer. And they said, add to this schedule, add your own events, organize things for the kids, organize events, organize opportunities to teach. And they said, just whatever you do, whether you're just throwing an event for the kids to have fun, or whether you're doing something of great import, then do it and organize it in a way that some way you can teach them. Incorporate some kind of biblical lesson into it. And I enjoyed my time thoroughly in Panhandle, and watching the kids grow. Watching at the beginning of the summer, some of the kids, I mean, they wouldn't even talk to me. They wouldn't sing when we sang. They weren't willing to participate in leading prayers or picking songs or answering questions or anything. And by the end of the summer, I mean, I would have 2 or 3 kids in the class. They would actually be so involved in it. They would be going back and forth and having discussions with one another, not even necessarily with me. And that was very impactful for me, because, again, that was something I hadn't ever really had a chance to see before. And just a lot of things for me changed in my attitude in the time that I was out there. So it was a very good experience. Thank you.
I'm Paul Aarons, and this summer, my wife Claire and I, we went up to Puyallup Church of Christ, which is about 35 minutes south of Seattle, and we served as the youth interns. One thing to note is the Puyallup Church of Christ is the Sunset Northwest Extension School up there, and that's actually where my office was. And it was a pretty eventful summer. This church, they started about 70 people, 3 years ago, and in those 3 years, they've grown to over about 200 people. They're a church that in the last few years has had a real emphasis on evangelism and a real emphasis on let's just love people, let's just love the community. For many of you that know about the Northwest, it's really not churched. It's nothing like down here. In Puyallup, 40,000 people, there's one Church of Christ. That's it, and that's the norm. In all of Seattle, 2 million people, there's two Churches of Christ. It's just not a churched area, and so people up there aren't looking for you to be yelling in their face, to be saying, turn to Jesus. They're looking for love. And when they see that, they see the truth. And that's when they see Jesus. And there's a real emphasis on that in Puyallup. And I would say that's the big reason for the growth. And also another reason for the growth is their elders. When we got there, when Claire and I got there, they handed me a calendar. They said, you're the guy. This is your summer. Fill it up. Do what you got to do. And they also told me to preach or teach 3 times a week. Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, and then maybe Friday night for a Bible study. So that was kind of crazy. I've never taught that much over and over. And but it was great. There's a lot of kids that have a desire. One in particular, he's only 12 years old, and he has biblical understanding like no one I've ever met. There's about 25 kids in the youth group. 70 of that 200 are under 18, and 25 in the youth. So that tells you that there's going to be a big wave, and that's why they invited Claire and I to come up there, because they're looking for a full-time youth minister. With that massive growth, they need someone to take care of their youth, and that was our biggest issue, is because there hasn't been a youth man up there. The church hasn't emphasized youth events. So when the summer comes, they're out with their families, traveling, this, that, or that. And so we started out having events of 20 people, and then towards the end, we could at best get 2, 3. And that's just the way it goes. They need a youth man who can really bring a culture of emphasis on the youth. I know I need to finish, but just a couple things we did is I'm a big believer in the best way to show your Christianity, to show the community Christ, is through service work. And so we did some service projects, and the highlight of the summer, hands down, was the youth-led service, where I had that same 12-year-old boy and one of our high school graduates preach, and then all the youth did all the song leading and prayer. None of the adults did anything, and that was such an encouragement. In fact, they wanted to keep doing that every month. Thank you.